The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive crystal structure that caught the light of distant stars. Inside, representatives from 12 different alien species sat in their designated seats, their faces showing fear and exhaustion. They had been meeting for 3 days straight, and still no solution had been found. Ambassador Telsin stood at the center platform, his blue skin pale with stress. His species, the Varans, had always been peaceful. They traded, they negotiated, they built beautiful cities on garden worlds. But now those cities were burning. The Krithok swarm had come, and nothing could stop them. Honored members, Telsin began, his voice translator making his words understandable to all present. We have lost 4 more colonies in the past week. The shield worlds are falling. Our fleets cannot hold them back. If we do not act now, the Varan Confederacy will cease to exist within 2 months. Council Director Jalene, whose crystalline body refracted light into rainbow patterns, made a sound like breaking glass. It meant disagreement. We have provided military assistance. We have sent supplies. What more can be done? The swarm adapts to every weapon we use against it. A reptilian delegate from the Sorth Collective hissed in agreement. My people have studied the swarm for decades. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be stopped. They only consume. Telsin's hands shook as he activated a holographic display. Images of destroyed worlds appeared above them. Cities reduced to organic matter. Billions of lives ended. Children, elders, families, all absorbed into the swarm's endless hunger. There is one option we have not tried, Telsin said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what he was about to suggest, and no one wanted to hear it. You cannot be serious, Jalene said, standing up from her seat. You want to contact the humans? The word humans caused immediate reactions throughout the chamber. Some delegates made sounds of disgust. Others showed fear. A few looked curious, but most looked horrified. Telsin nodded slowly. I am completely serious. They have the military capability we need. They are Deathworlders, shouted a small, furry delegate from the Pixan Unity. They come from a world that would kill most of us in minutes. Their planet has weather that destroys cities, animals that hunt for sport, and diseases that spread like wildfire. The humans themselves are predators, pack hunters with forward-facing eyes and teeth designed to tear meat. I am aware of their biology, Telsin replied calmly. I have read all the reports from First Contact 50 years ago. Yes, they are dangerous. Yes, they come from a death world, but that might be exactly what we need right now. Another delegate, an insectoid being named Klecha, clicked her mandibles nervously. The quarantine was put in place for good reasons. The initial contact team reported that humans have over 500 words for killing in their primary language alone. They teach their children about historical wars as entertainment. They create fictional stories about violence for enjoyment. Their entire culture celebrates conflict. Telsin pulled up another image, this time of a human fleet on patrol near their quarantine zone. The ships looked brutal and efficient, covered in armor plating and weapon systems that seemed excessive even to military analysts. Unlike the elegant curved designs of most galactic vessels, human ships looked like they were built to smash through anything in their way. Yes, they are violent, Telsin admitted, but they are also loyal to their allies. The reports show that humans form deep emotional bonds with those they consider friends. They have a concept they call honor that prevents them from breaking promises. And most importantly, they understand the swarm in ways we do not. What do you mean? Asked Jalene, her crystalline structure dimming with concern. Humans know what it means to fight for survival against impossible odds. Their entire evolutionary history is a story of overcoming threats that should have killed them. They faced ice ages, predators larger than themselves, diseases, and natural disasters. They did not just survive, they thrived. They became the apex predator of their entire planet. The chamber filled with uneasy murmuring. Several delegates checked their personal devices, reviewing the classified files on humanity. The information was disturbing. Humans could run for hours without stopping. They could heal from injuries that would be fatal to most species. They could eat food that was literally toxic to other beings. And most terrifying of all, they seemed to enjoy challenging themselves against dangerous situations. I call for a vote, Telsin announced. Do we send a distress signal to Earth and request military assistance, or do we face extinction alone? The vote took 2 hours. Arguments flew back and forth. Some delegates insisted that inviting humans into galactic affairs would create a bigger problem than the swarm. Others argued that desperate times required desperate measures. A few abstained, unable to choose between two terrifying options. Finally, the results appeared on the main display. The motion passed by exactly 3 votes. Telsin felt no relief, only a deep sense of dread mixed with hope. He walked to the communications console and composed the message himself. It had to be simple and direct. Humans, according to the reports, appreciated straightforward communication. "Attention, United Earth Defense Fleet," he typed. "This is Ambassador Telsin of the Varan Confederacy, broadcasting on behalf of the Galactic Council. We face an existential threat from a hostile species known as the Krithok Swarm. Our military forces have been unable to stop their advance. We require immediate military assistance. Payment and terms are negotiable. Attached are tactical data and star charts. Please respond." He pressed the send button and the message shot out through the quantum communication network toward the Sol system. It would arrive at Earth in seconds. Now all they could do was wait and hope that calling the Deathworlders for help would not turn out to be the biggest mistake in galactic history. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UED's Indomitable, staring at the message that had just arrived from beyond known space. Around her, officers moved quickly through their duties, but she could feel the tension in the air. Everyone had heard the rumors. Everyone knew what this meant. "Confirm the message authenticity," she ordered her communications officer. "Confirmed, Admiral. Quantum signature matches Galactic Council protocols. The distress call is legitimate." Sarah was 52 years old and had spent 30 years in Earth's defense fleet. She had fought pirates, dealt with rogue asteroids, and maintained the quarantine perimeter that kept humanity isolated from the rest of the galaxy. She knew exactly why that quarantine existed. The other species feared humans, and perhaps they had good reason to. "Get me a line to Earth Command," she said, "and start running combat scenarios based on the tactical data they sent." Within 2 hours, she was in a virtual conference with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary General of the United Earth Government, and the heads of all major military branches. The holographic projections made it look like they were all in the same room. General Marcus Webb, head of Earth's military forces, pulled up images of the Krithok swarm. "This is what we are dealing with. A hive-minded species that reproduces exponentially and consumes biological matter for fuel and growth. They have overwhelmed 12 different species and show no signs of stopping." "How long do we have to prepare?" Sarah asked. "The Varan Confederacy has maybe 6 weeks before complete collapse. If we are going to help, we need to move fast." The Secretary General, a woman named Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, leaned forward. "This is our chance to prove ourselves to the galactic community. For 50 years, they have kept us locked in our own system like we are dangerous animals. If we help them, we might finally get a seat at their table." Sarah nodded, but added, "We should also be realistic. They called us because they are desperate, not because they trust us. The moment the threat is gone, they might go back to fearing us. Then we show them who we really are," General Webb said firmly. "We mobilize everything we have. Full battle fleet. Marines, support vessels, medical ships, the whole package. We show them that humans do not do anything halfway." The authorization came through within 24 hours. Humanity would respond to the distress call with overwhelming force. The assembly of the fleet began immediately. At the Mars orbital shipyards, crews worked around the clock. 47 warships prepared for deployment, ranging from massive carrier vessels to fast attack cruisers. 200 support ships loaded supplies, ammunition, and equipment. 50,000 military personnel received orders and began boarding transports. Subcommander Rintha of the Varan Confederacy arrived at Earth 3 days after the message was sent. She had been chosen as the liaison officer because she was young, adaptable, and spoke perfect English. Nothing could have prepared her for what she saw. The humans worked with frightening efficiency. They moved heavy equipment that would require mechanical assistance on any other world, carrying it with their own muscular strength. They spoke in short, clipped sentences full of military jargon, and they seemed excited about the coming battle in a way that made Rintha's skin crawl. She was assigned quarters on the Indomitable and immediately noticed how different human ships were from Varan vessels. Everything was reinforced metal and practical design. There were no decorative elements, no artwork, no comfortable spaces. It was a ship built purely for war. Admiral Chen met with her in the briefing room. The human woman was shorter than Rintha, but somehow more intimidating. She had scars on her hands and a directness in her eyes that suggested she had seen real combat. "Welcome aboard, Subcommander," Chen said, gesturing to a seat. "I know this must be overwhelming for you." "I confess I did not expect such a rapid response," Rintha replied, sitting down carefully. "Your entire civilization mobilized in less than a week. We have been ready for this for a long time," Chen explained. "Not for this specific threat, but for the idea that someday someone might need our help. We have spent 50 years preparing, training, and building. Your distress call gave us a purpose." Rintha looked at the tactical displays showing the fleet formation. "Why do you have so many weapons? Your ships carry enough firepower to destroy planets." Chen smiled slightly. "We come from a world where everything tried to kill us, Subcommander. We learned a long time ago that having too much firepower is better than having too little. Besides, we have studied the swarm data you sent. They adapt quickly. We need to hit them with everything we have before they figure out how to counter us." Over the next week, as the fleet prepared to jump to Varan space, Rintha kept a detailed journal of her observations. She watched human marines train in high-gravity chambers that would crush most species. She saw them practice hand-to-hand combat with an intensity that seemed more like genuine fighting than training. She heard them joke about death and injury as if these were minor inconveniences. One evening, she witnessed something that truly disturbed her. Two human soldiers got into an argument in the mess hall. Within seconds, they were hitting each other with full force. Rintha prepared to call security, but the other humans just watched with interest. After a minute, the two soldiers stopped, shook hands, and sat down to eat together while laughing. "What just happened?" she asked a nearby lieutenant. The human shrugged. They were settling a disagreement. "It is normal. They were trying to hurt each other. Yeah, but not seriously. Just getting some frustration out. They are friends again now." Rintha realized that humans had a completely different relationship with violence than her species. For Varans, any physical conflict was traumatic and required extensive counseling. For humans, it seemed to be just another form of communication. The day before the fleet jumped to FTL, Admiral Chen gathered all 50,000 personnel for a speech. Rintha watched from the command deck as Chen's face appeared on screens throughout the entire armada. "We are about to do something that no human force has ever done," Chen began. "We are going to save an alien civilization from extinction. They called us because they had no other choice. They are afraid of us. They think we are monsters from a death world. Maybe they are right. But we are going to show them something else too. We are going to show them that monsters can be heroes, that predators can be protectors, that the same species that evolved to survive Earth's horrors can use that strength to defend others. We are going to make humanity proud." The cheering that followed was deafening. 50,000 voices shouting in unison, ready for war. Rintha felt ice in her veins. She had called for help, and help had answered. But now she wondered if they had unleashed something far more terrifying than the swarm itself. The human fleet dropped out of FTL space at the edge of the Thessia Prime system, and immediately every sensor on every ship began screaming warnings. The Varan colony world was dying. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display with cold eyes. 70% of the planet's surface was covered in the organic matter of the swarm. From orbit, it looked like a massive fungal infection spreading across a beautiful garden world. Millions of Krathok creatures moved across the surface like insects, while their bioships circled above, dropping more warriors to join the consumption. "How many Varan survivors?" Chen asked. "Approximately 2 million concentrated in the capital city shield dome. The dome is failing. Estimate 6 hours until collapse. Then we have 5 hours to work with. Tactical. Give me firing solutions on all swarm ground concentrations. I want targeting data on every bioship in orbit." Rintha stood beside Chen, her hands shaking as she watched her people's colony being devoured. "Admiral, the Varan defense fleet tried orbital bombardment. The swarm just adapted. They spread out and regrew from the fragments." "They adapted to Varan tactics," Chen replied. "They have never faced human tactics." "Weapons load the rods." "Rods?" Rintha asked. Chen pulled up a schematic. Tungsten steel rods, each one weighing 20 tons, dropped from orbit. No explosives, no energy signatures, just kinetic energy. By the time they hit the ground, they will be moving at 20,000 miles per hour. The swarm can adapt to energy weapons and chemical explosives, but they cannot adapt to physics. Rintha watched in horror as 200 tungsten rods launched from the human ships. They fell toward the planet like metal rain. When they impacted, the results were devastating. Each rod hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon, creating massive craters and shockwaves that vaporized everything within a mile radius. The swarm's organic mass was obliterated in seconds. Millions of Krathog creatures simply ceased to exist. But instead of regrouping like they had done with Varan attacks, the swarm recoiled. For the first time in recorded history, the Krathog showed something resembling fear. All bioships are breaking orbit, the tactical officer reported. They are attempting to retreat. Negative, Chen said firmly. Launch fighters. I want every swarm ship destroyed before it can jump to FTL. No survivors, no witnesses to take information back to their hive. Human fighter craft, small and incredibly fast, swarmed out of the carrier vessels. They moved with aggressive precision, targeting the bioship's propulsion systems. The swarm ships tried to fight back with organic weapons that shot corrosive material and bioelectric charges. But human fighters were too quick and too determined. Within 30 minutes, every swarm vessel in orbit was destroyed. Prepare for ground assault, Chen ordered. Major Rodriguez, your battalion has the drop. On the troop carrier Valkyrie, Major James Rodriguez checked his combat armor one final time. Around him, 500 Marines from the 4th Orbital Drop Battalion did the same. They were about to attempt something that every other species considered suicidal. A combat drop through hostile atmosphere, directly into enemy territory. Listen up, Rodriguez said over the battalion comm channel. The swarm thinks it is a predator. It thinks it is at the top of the food chain. We are about to teach it what real predators look like. Remember your training. Stay in formation. Watch your fire lanes. And do not stop moving until every bug in that city is dead. Understood? Sir, yes, sir. 500 voices answered as one. The drop pods launched. Each one was a small armored capsule containing a single Marine, falling toward the planet at terminal velocity. Swarm creatures on the ground looked up and tried to intercept them with biological projectiles, but the pods were too fast and too heavily armored. Rodriguez felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as his pod screamed through the atmosphere. He had done this 100 times in training and twice in real combat situations on Earth colonies, but this was different. This was first contact with a hostile alien species, and his entire species was being judged by how well they performed. The pods impacted in a coordinated pattern around the Varan shield dome. Hatches blew open explosively and Marines emerged with weapons ready. The swarm responded immediately, sending wave after wave of warrior forms. Creatures the size of large dogs with multiple limbs, razor-sharp claws and acidic spit. Rodriguez shot the first Krathog he saw, his rifle punching holes through its armored carapace. Around him, his Marines formed a defensive perimeter, their weapons creating a continuous wall of fire. The swarm creatures kept coming, but they were facing humans, persistence hunters who had evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Contact left, someone shouted. Rodriguez spun and emptied half a magazine into a cluster of swarm warriors trying to flank them. The creatures died, but more appeared to replace them. For 10 minutes, the battle was absolute chaos. Humans and Krathog locked in brutal close combat. Then something changed. The swarm stopped attacking. The creatures pulled back, regrouping at a distance. Rodriguez had studied the tactical data. The Krathog never retreated from small unit engagements. They overwhelmed through numbers or they died trying. They are learning, he muttered. They figured out we are dangerous. But the swarm had made a critical mistake. They had given humans time to consolidate their position. More drop pods landed. Combat engineers set up defensive barriers. Heavy weapons teams assembled their equipment. Within an hour, the human beachhead was unbreakable. Rintha had insisted on joining the ground forces despite Chen's objections. She wore borrowed human armor that was too heavy and too bulky, but she wanted to see the fighting up close. What she witnessed would stay with her forever. She watched a human Marine take a claw strike that tore through his armor and into his chest. The wound was serious, potentially fatal for a Varan, but the human just pressed a medical foam dispenser against the injury, sealed it, and kept fighting. He did not scream. He did not collapse. He just kept moving. She saw another Marine fall from a high position, breaking his leg on impact. He crawled to cover, injected himself with something from his medical kit, and continued shooting from a prone position. The pain must have been incredible, but his face showed only determination. Most disturbing of all, she heard them talking to each other during the battle. They were joking, making casual comments about the swarm creatures like they were discussing the weather. One Marine called out, "Got another one," like he was keeping score in a game. These were not soldiers fighting for survival. These were apex predators enjoying a hunt. By the end of the first day, the swarm had been pushed back 5 miles from the Varen city. Human forces established a secure perimeter and began rotating units for rest. The Krethok tried 3 more attacks during the night, and all 3 were repelled with heavy swarm casualties. Major Rodriguez found Rintha sitting on a supply crate staring at the battlefield. Her hands were shaking and her face showed shock. "First time in combat?" he asked gently. "First time seeing humans in combat," she replied. "I thought I understood what your species was capable of." "I was wrong." Rodriguez sat down beside her. "We are good at war. Our whole history taught us to be. But we are not doing this because we enjoy killing, Subcommander. We are doing this because someone called for help and we answered. Those Viren civilians behind that shield, they are alive because we were willing to fight for them." Rintha looked at him. This human had killed dozens of swarm creatures today. She had watched him do it, but his eyes held no cruelty, only tired determination. "Thank you," she said quietly. Rodriguez nodded and stood up. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we push them further back. This planet is not going to fall. Not on our watch." As he walked away, Rintha realized something important. Humans were terrifying, yes, but they were terrifying in defense of others. Maybe that was what the galaxy needed most. 3 weeks after the liberation of Thessia Prime, the human fleet had shifted from defense to offense. Admiral Chen stood in the war room, studying star charts that showed swarm movements across 17 different systems. Her strategy was simple and brutal: hunt the Krethok back to their source and eliminate the threat permanently. The Galactic Council had sent multiple messages expressing concern about human tactics. Ambassador Telsin had forwarded them to Chen with his own apologies. She read through the latest complaint and shook her head. "They think we are being too aggressive," she told her command staff. "The Council wants proportional response. They want us to push the swarm back to their borders and establish containment." "Containment does not work," General Webb said via quantum comm from Earth. "The swarm adapted to every containment strategy the Virens tried. If we leave them alive, they will just evolve and attack again in 5 years or 10 years. The only way to stop them is to end them completely." Rintha, who had become a permanent fixture on the Indomitable's bridge, spoke up hesitantly. "Admiral, my people believe all life is sacred. The idea of deliberately making a species extinct is difficult for us to accept." Chen turned to face her. "Subcommander, I respect your people's beliefs. I truly do. But let me ask you something. If the swarm reaches your homeworld, will they show mercy? Will they spare your children because life is sacred?" Rintha looked down. "No. They will consume everything. Then we do not have the luxury of philosophical debates. We end the threat, or the threat ends you. Those are the only 2 options." The human offensive pushed deep into swarm space. They encountered resistance unlike anything the Varens had faced. The Krethok had adapted, creating new warrior forms specifically designed to counter human tactics. These new creatures were larger, more armored, and attacked with strategic coordination rather than simple swarming. At the Nephara Nebula, the human fleet encountered the largest concentration of swarm bioships ever recorded. Over 300 vessels filled with millions of Krethok warriors. The battle that followed would be remembered as one of the most violent confrontations in galactic history. Human carriers launched wave after wave of fighters. Destroyers and cruisers positioned themselves in defensive formations, creating overlapping fields of fire. The swarm responded by sending suicide ships, vessels filled with explosive biological material that tried to ram human warships. Incoming ram ship, bearing 047. Tactical called out. "Point defense, take it out," Chen ordered calmly. The Indomitable's automated defense guns opened fire, shredding the bioship before it could close the distance, but 3 more appeared immediately behind it. "They are learning our defense patterns," the tactical officer reported. "They are sending decoys to drain our ammunition before the real attacks. Then we adapt faster." Chen replied. All ships switched to energy weapons for point defense, save kinetics for capital targets. The battle lasted 6 hours. Human ships took heavy damage, with 2 destroyers completely destroyed and 5 others crippled. But the swarm lost everything. 300 bioships were reduced to floating organic debris. Not a single Krithok vessel escaped. While the fleet fought in space, special operations teams executed missions that would give the Galactic Council nightmares. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Malik led a 12-person infiltration team into a swarm hive ship that had been disabled but not destroyed. Their mission was to gather intelligence and plant a biological weapon. The interior of the hive ship was like walking through the organs of a massive creature. Everything was organic: walls that pulsed with life, floors that were spongy and warm, air that smelled of rot and chemicals. Malik's team moved through the corridors with weapons ready, their suits sealed against the toxic atmosphere. "Contact," whispered Corporal Chen. "Multiple hostiles, next chamber." Malik signaled for silence. They could not afford a firefight inside the ship. Instead, they used something else: nerve agent grenades developed specifically for the Krithok biology. The gas spread through the chamber, and the swarm creatures inside died without ever knowing humans had been there. They reached the ship's central nerve cluster, a massive organic computer that controlled all hive functions. Malik attached the biological weapon, a modified virus that would spread through the swarm's communication network, disrupting their coordination and causing system-wide confusion. "Package delivered," she reported over the comm. "Extracting now. They almost made it out. Almost." A swarm patrol intercepted them 50 meters from their entry point. The firefight was brief and vicious. 2 human soldiers died buying time for the others to escape. Malik made it back to the extraction shuttle with the surviving team members, carrying the body of one of the fallen. Rintha watched as they brought the bodies aboard the Indomitable. She had seen human casualties before, but something about this mission affected her more deeply. These soldiers had walked into an enemy ship knowing they might not come back just to plant a weapon. She found Malik in the medical bay, getting treatment for a claw wound on her shoulder. "Why did you do it?" Rintha asked. "Why risk your life? For people you barely know?" Malik looked at her with tired eyes. "Because someone had to. Because if we did not, the swarm would keep spreading. Because that is what humans do. We step into the darkness so others do not have to. But 2 of your people died." "I know. Jenkins and Ortega. They were good soldiers and better people. But they knew the risks and they believed in the mission. That is worth something." Rintha realized she was crying. Varens rarely cried, but the emotions were too strong. "My people would never ask this of anyone. We could never send soldiers on missions where death was likely. That is because your people evolved on a kind world," Malik said gently. "You did not have to become comfortable with death. We did. Every human knows that life is temporary and fragile. We accept it. We do not fear it the way you do. That makes us seem reckless, but it also makes us effective." Over the next 2 weeks, human forces pushed closer to the swarm homeworld. The Krithok fought desperately, throwing everything they had against the human advance. But they were fighting a species that had evolved to persist, to endure, to overcome. During a ground campaign on a swarm colony world, something unexpected happened. A small Varen freighter had been captured by the Krithok months earlier. Its crew of 200 civilians were being held in organic prisons, slowly being converted into biological material. Major Rodriguez's battalion detected their distress signal during a sweep operation. The rescue was not part of their mission objectives. They were supposed to be destroying swarm infrastructure, not diverting resources for a rescue operation that might already be too late. Rodriguez called for a vote among his officers. "This is going to cost us time and probably lives," he said. "The strategic value is 0, but there are 200 people down there who might still be breathing. What do you want to do?" Every single officer voted to attempt the rescue. They hit the swarm prison facility with everything they had. The Krithok defenders fought hard to protect their captives, but they were facing humans who refused to accept failure. The battle cost 8 human lives and 37 wounded. But when it was over, 173 Viren civilians were pulled out alive. Rintha was there when the survivors were brought aboard the medical ships. They were traumatized, malnourished, and in shock. But they were alive because humans had decided that saving them mattered more than tactical efficiency. She found Rodriguez afterward, watching the medical ships jump to FTL on their way to Veron space. "You lost people for this rescue," she said. "Was it worth it?" Rodriguez looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. "Sub-Commander, I have killed a lot of Krithok in the past month. I have burned their cities and destroyed their ships. I have done things that will probably give me nightmares for the rest of my life. But today, I saved 173 people. Yes, it was worth it. It will always be worth it." That night, Rintha updated her report to the Galactic Council. She tried to explain what she had learned about humans. They were violent, yes. They were dangerous, absolutely. But they were also capable of extraordinary compassion and sacrifice. They were not monsters. They were protectors who had learned to be deadly because their world demanded it. The swarm homeworld hung in space like a massive organic tumor. From orbit, Hive Prime looked nothing like a normal planet. Its surface was completely covered in biological matter, hive structures that reached kilometers into the sky, organic farms that processed minerals into nutrients, and breeding chambers that produced millions of Krithok warriors every day. Admiral Chen studied the sensor data with a mixture of professional assessment and moral uncertainty. Destroying this world meant ending a species that had existed for thousands of years. It meant making a decision that would change the galaxy forever. Final intelligence reports confirm approximately 6 billion Krithok on the surface, her tactical officer reported. All major hive nodes have been identified and targeted. And the Queen? Deep underground, protected by 3 kilometers of organic armor and surrounded by elite warrior forms. She has been broadcasting surrender signals for the past 6 hours. Chen pulled up the messages. The Swarm Queen's communication was primitive but clear. She offered complete cessation of hostilities, withdrawal from all occupied territories, and genetic modification to remove aggressive expansion traits. In exchange, she asked for survival of her species. "Get me a conference with Earth Command and the senior staff," Chen ordered. Within an hour, the senior leadership of the human military was debating the future of an alien species. The arguments were fierce and passionate. "We came here to end a threat," argued General Marcus Webb. "If we leave them alive, we are just giving them time to adapt and attack again. The only logical solution is complete extermination." "We are not exterminators," countered General Patricia Okonkwo. "We are defenders. The swarm is offering surrender. If we refuse and commit genocide, what does that make us?" "It makes us survivors," Webb shot back. "This species has consumed entire civilizations. They have killed trillions of sentient beings. They do not deserve mercy." Admiral Chen listened to the debate for 2 hours before calling for silence. "We need to decide what kind of species humanity wants to be. Do we want to be known as the galaxy's executioners? Or do we want to show that even Deathworlders understand restraint?" The vote was close. In the end, the decision was made to offer compromise. The swarm would be allowed to survive, but only under the strictest conditions in galactic history. Chen opened a channel to the Swarm Queen. The translation was rough, but the message was clear. "We accept your surrender under the following terms. Your species will be reduced to a single colony on a designated world. Your population will be limited to 1% of current numbers. Your genetic code will be modified to remove aggressive expansion drives. Human monitoring stations will be established, and any violation of these terms will result in immediate extermination. These terms are non-negotiable." The Swarm Queen's response was simple. Accepted. The final assault on Hive Prime was called Nova Protocol, a massive coordinated strike designed to crack the planet's crust without destroying it completely. Orbital bombardment, seismic charges, and targeted demolition of hive nodes worked in carefully calculated sequence. The devastation was absolute. Entire hive cities collapsed. Billions of Krithok died as their world was systematically dismantled. But the human forces also worked to preserve, collecting genetic samples, protecting the Queen's chamber, ensuring that enough of the swarm survived to rebuild under human supervision. Major Rodriguez led the ground team that extracted the Swarm Queen. Descending into the depths of Hive Prime was like walking into the belly of a dying god. Everywhere, Krethok workers and warriors lay dead or dying. The few survivors showed no aggression, only exhaustion and acceptance. The queen herself was massive, easily 50 meters long, a bloated creature connected to organic machinery that had sustained her for centuries. Her consciousness touched Rodriguez's mind through chemical signals his suit translated. "You are the apex," the queen communicated. "We challenged the wrong predator." Rodriguez felt no satisfaction in the victory. "We did not want to be predators. You forced us to become them." "Yes, we understand now. Will you keep your promise? Will you let us survive?" "Yes. But know this, if your species ever threatens the galaxy again, we will end you completely. There will be no third chance, we accept. We will remember." 6 weeks later, Ambassador Telsin stood before the Galactic Council once again. The chamber was fuller than usual. Representatives from dozens of species had come to witness the debate about humanity's future in galactic affairs. "The Krethok swarm has been neutralized," Telsin reported. "Humanity completed their mission with overwhelming success. They saved my people from extinction and prevented the swarm from consuming half the galaxy. I move that we offer them full membership in the Galactic Council." The reaction was immediate and divided. Some species cheered. Others protested loudly. Council Director Jalene called for order. "The humans have proven they are effective warriors," Jalene said. "But that is precisely why many of us are concerned. They are too dangerous, too violent, too comfortable with death and destruction." Ambassador Telsin stepped forward. "I spent 2 months with human forces. I watched them fight. I watched them die. And I learned something important. They are only violent when violence is necessary. When given the chance to show mercy, they chose mercy. When given the opportunity to commit genocide, they chose restraint. Yes, they are terrifying in battle, but they are also capable of extraordinary compassion. They killed 6 billion Krethok," shouted a delegate from the back. "They saved 600 million, Rintha said, standing up. She had been invited to speak as a witness. The swarm population was reduced to a sustainable level, not exterminated. Humans could have destroyed that entire species in a day. Instead, they spent weeks carefully dismantling the threat while preserving what they could. That shows wisdom, not cruelty." The debate lasted 3 days. Finally, a vote was called. Humanity would be offered full membership in the Galactic Council, with 2 conditions. First, they would maintain their military forces under their own command, but any offensive action would require Council approval. Second, they would share their military technology and training with species that requested it. Admiral Chen received the news while overseeing the decommissioning of the human fleet. She read the terms carefully and smiled. "They want us in, but they still fear us," she said to Rintha, who had returned to the Indomitable for the journey home. "Can you blame them?" Rintha asked. "You terrified half the galaxy. We saved half the galaxy. Both things are true." 5 years passed. The Galactic Council established the Interspecies Defense Force, with human advisors training soldiers from 24 different species. The Krethok swarm remained confined to their designated world, monitored by human observation posts. 3 new species joined the galactic community specifically because they knew humanity would protect them. Ambassador Telsin retired and wrote a book about his experiences during the Swarm War. It became required reading in diplomatic schools across the galaxy. The title was simple: The Deathworlders Who Saved Us. Rintha became Earth's first alien ambassador, living in Geneva and working to bridge the cultural gap between humans and other species. She gave hundreds of speeches explaining human nature to audiences who still struggled to understand. "Yes, they are predators," she would say. "Yes, they come from a world that tried to kill them every day. Yes, they are comfortable with violence in ways we cannot comprehend, but they are also loyal, brave, and willing to sacrifice everything for those they protect." The galaxy called them monsters. I call them heroes. Major Rodriguez, now Colonel Rodriguez, stood in the memorial park on Earth where 4,000 names were carved into black stone. Each name represented a human who had died during the Swarm War. He placed flowers at the base of the memorial, as he did every year on the anniversary of the final battle. A young Viren approached him hesitantly. She was barely an adult with bright purple skin and curious eyes. "Excuse me, sir. Are you Colonel Rodriguez, the one from the stories?" He nodded. "I am. My mother was on Thessia Prime when you saved it. She always told me that humans were the bravest people she ever met. I wanted to say thank you. Rodriguez looked at the memorial, then back at the young Varan. We did what anyone should do. We answered when someone called for help. Not anyone would have, she replied. Only humans. That is why I am here. I enlisted in the Interspecies Defense Force. I want to learn from you. I want to be brave like humans. Rodriguez smiled. It was a tired smile, weighted with memories of battles and fallen friends, but it was genuine. Then welcome to the fight, soldier. The galaxy is counting on us. As the young Varan walked away with determination in her step, Rodriguez looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, other threats existed. Other species that might need help. Other battles that would need to be fought. The galaxy had called for help, and humanity had answered. They had unleashed their wrath on those who threatened the innocent. They had shown that Deathworlders could be protectors, that predators could be heroes, that violence and compassion were not opposites but two sides of the same coin, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The message had been received clearly. If you needed saving, call the humans. If you threatened the innocent, fear the humans. They were no longer the quarantined species from a death world. They were the galaxy's defenders, and they would never back down from that responsibility. The swarm had learned this lesson the hard way. So would anyone else who threatened peace. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through diplomacy or trade, but through sacrifice and strength. And they would protect their new home with the same ferocity they had once used to survive Earth. The death world had sent its children to the stars, and the stars were safer for it.